Welcome to the Finding Something More to Talk About talk show. I'm your host, Nancy Wrench. This podcast is designed to stimulate thought-provoking conversations as we gather diverse voices and dive into a variety of lifestyle topics. Join me now as we find something more to talk about.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming tonight. This presentation is called Later is Too Late. My husband, Ted, passed away in 2017. And so I went through the experience of settling our estate. And I had a client ask me a very good question. She said, what did you learn from this experience? You're a financial advisor. Were there some things that you learned that you might want to share with us? And she asked me to actually come up with a presentation, which is what I'm going to share with you tonight. So I had to come up with something, and I really wasn't sure where to start. Then I was lucky enough to stumble upon a book by Susan Alpert entitled Later is Too Late. This book is wonderful because it tells stories. And I want to tell you also a little bit about Susan. I've gotten to know her since I met her in 2018. Like me, Susan lost her husband of 46 years in 2008. She found herself drowning in a sea of paperwork, and that compounded her grief. And Susan is a doer. So she believed that no one else should have to face confusing legal and financial obligations of loss alone. So she started out with her first book called Driving Solo for people who've lost a spouse. And then she wrote Later is Too Late, Hard Conversations That Can't Wait. And again, the reason I really like this book is that it tells the stories of 12 women and how they overcame losses and their lives moved on successfully. She's an author and entrepreneur. Because of a lot of this work, she's been a frequent guest on national radio and television shows. And guess what? Because you're at this webinar, you are going to get a free copy of her book. So this will be after the webinar and after you've attended. And I also have another surprise for you. I think we're going to be able to do this, but Susan's actually on tonight observing. So I think if we can bring Susan in now, that would be wonderful to say hello. Let's see. I see you, Susan. I just can't hear you. I don't know. There's a little microphone if you want to unmute it on the bottom left, if you can. If you can't, you can wave to everybody and then I can get started, whatever's easiest for you. Just so delighted that she's here. Okay. I think what we'll do is, I think I'll just go ahead and start the slideshow now. We'll just go ahead and start the PowerPoint. But Susan, thank you so much for coming. Okay. All right, so here we go. Okay, so here now you see the cover of the book Later is Too Late. And let's go ahead and get started. The first thing in this book that you want to do is complete the questionnaire on pages 24 through 26. This questionnaire is pretty simple, yes or no. Do you have an accountant, yes or no? Do you have an attorney, yes or no? What this is going to help you do is get a base point for where you are, how prepared you are. And you're here tonight, so kudos to you. Most of us at 6 o'clock on a Tuesday night might rather be doing something else than sitting in this webinar. So this is the first step, and I'm really excited that you're here tonight. Okay, now I'm going to dive into ways to prepare yourself. Specifically, this is kind of we're going to start into the nitty-gritty now. All right, so when you have accounts and you're married, or you have a trusted person like a child or someone else in your life, you want to make sure that everybody knows where the accounts are and they know how to access them. You want to know exactly what insurance policies and investments you have. You want to organize all of your paperwork, and you want to have copies that live elsewhere. And what I mean by that is store them on the cloud in some sort of encrypted vault, store them on a hard drive, If your house burns down and your documents are all gone, it's a horrible situation, obviously. The other thing is, have a plan for how to liquidate investments if you need them. You don't want to be stuck with needing funds and you only can access assets that are going to, cause you to have tax consequences. Also, it's really important that both partners have access to every financial aspect of your lives. All right, so now we're going to move on to uncomfortable conversations. What I'm talking about here is family conversations. I've been a certified financial planner for almost 24 years, and I have heard some stories. Sometimes parents don't like to explain to children why things are set up the way they're set up. I'm sure you've all heard stories of siblings that don't talk to each other anymore because they didn't understand why one sibling got one particular asset and another one didn't. So it's really important to do your estate planning and sit down with your family and have a conversation. And by the way, just a disclaimer, I'm not an estate planning attorney. I can't give legal advice, but I highly recommend you find a good one. The other part here is, especially don't put off creating a will. Drafting a will and clearly stating your wishes on paper will help avoid stress, drama, and arguments that may occur. We were just talking before this webinar and remembering how there's quite a few celebrities who didn't even do a will. We were talking about Prince. It's absolutely amazing how some people don't do this in advance. It's very important. All right, so normally when I present this in person, I ask everybody to shout out an answer or state an answer, but I'm just going to tell you. So 60% of adults lack a will or an estate plan. That's a lot of people. It's hard for me as a planner to believe that. And also as someone who, and I imagine all of you on here care about your families and you want to make sure things are handled the way you want them to be handled. Second question, part 2. This has to do with probate. Now, probate occurs if you have an asset where there's no beneficiary. So it's not in an IRA and it's held in such a way, maybe it's just in your name. Probate is very expensive. In California, a probate proceeding is going to be required if the assets of an estate are worth more than $150,000. Just a story, I have a widow who I'm working with. They had an account that escaped. They had a trust, but the account was never put into the trust. She had to pay $12,000 to probate that. You'll understand why she had to pay so much on this screen. It's basically, it's a scale that starts, at 4% and then it goes up. I'm not going to go through all the numbers here. You can see what it is. So you can see the cost to probate an estate of $150,000 in California is $5,500. Now, what does this mean statutory? It means that the attorneys have to charge it. It means it's a law. So you can't negotiate this. So whatever you do, make sure you have your assets titled in such a way that they're not going to be subject to probate. Accounts. Okay. So when we're talking about accounts, we're talking where you want, to have somebody else who has access. We're talking about bank accounts, business accounts. If you're a small business owner and you are the only one that can sign the checks and you're in the hospital, you could have some issues, okay? Or you don't have anybody else who's able to pay your bills for you. Brokerage accounts, as I just mentioned, they're not held in your trust, they're not an IRA. Do you have a beneficiary? Because you can actually set up beneficiaries on these types of accounts. They're called transfer on death or payable on death accounts. This one I learned, which was really interesting to me after Ted died. I went in to meet with our business banker, and told her that, he had passed away. And she said to me that I should leave his name on an account for at least a year on one account, because she said, you're going to get checks made out to him and it's going to be very difficult to cash them. You literally have to go to an attorney, get a special letter. So I did that. And sure enough, checks did come in. Now, my caveat here is that if you have an estate attorney that for some reason feels that you need to remove them off the account, obviously do it. But I was really surprised when I learned this. And sure enough, there were some checks that came in. There weren't any $1 million checks, but there were some checks that came in that I was able to then deposit. Credit cards. You can lose your frequent flyer miles if you're both on a card and one of you passes away. This happened to another family. They had a small business. The daughter and mom were on a credit card. And as a small business owner, if some of you are on here and you try to use your credit card for as much as you can, right? Well, the mother passed away. Daughter called the credit card company. They removed the mother, and then they proceeded to take away all of their points. I mean, this is kind of a small thing, but when you think about how much money they had to spend to accrue it, why have that happen? You don't have to remove people from accounts right away, is my whole point here. The other thing that can happen too is sometimes credit card companies will give you a really hard time when one person dies. So, you always want to have another credit card if you need it in those situations. Health insurance. While you're both walking on the earth, you need to make sure that you have access to each other's health insurance account. We all now know how it works. When you call any company today, if you are the spouse, you're not the person, they won't talk to you. So contact the insurance company and make sure that you're each listed on each other's account. So that way, if one of you is in the hospital and you can't communicate, you're at least able to get a hold of the insurance company to take care of matters. Pension statements. If you have a pension, verify your beneficiaries. How many times do we find out about somebody that maybe got divorced? Their pension is still going to the ex-wife, not their second wife or their current wife. So be sure to verify your beneficiaries if you have a pension. And then getting back to the insurance, healthcare powers of attorney are really, really critical. Do you have one? Can you find it? I'm going to go back to that because I just want to tell you another story. When I was just starting college, my mom's dad was in the hospital. He had had an aneurysm. I remember I came home to see him. I went to college in Indiana and I came back to St. Louis where I'm from, and I went to see him, and he was just, we've all probably been there, he wasn't able to communicate. It was really, really, really sad. Well, my grandfather did not have the healthcare power of attorney. My mother felt like we should let him die gracefully. Her brother felt like they shouldn't. So it turned into a conflict. When you have a healthcare power of attorney, you take all that stress away from your family members. So it's really important that you do this as part of your whole estate plan with an estate attorney. And then getting back to beneficiaries, you want to check them on your IRA accounts, 401k accounts, pensions, life insurance, and annuities. 401ks are can be especially problematic. There's a lot of people that have multiple 401ks from different employers. An employer is not mandated to make you set up a beneficiary. They should, but they're not. We had a family where the daughter passed away from cancer when she was 50. She had one of these 401ks. She was a nurse at a hospital. There was no beneficiary, so it went to the estate. What that meant was they had to liquidate the entire thing and pay taxes. So there was a lot of money lost because they just didn't know. So go through and check who your beneficiaries are. Is your home held in your living trust? So if you have a home and you have a living trust, you really want to own your home in the living trust unless there is some reason why the attorney has advised not to do that. A good way to check this is to look at your property tax statement because it will list who the owner is. It's important to do this. You may think it's in your living trust, but here's what can happen. If you refinanced your home, it might be out of your trust. When you do a refinance, they take your home out of your trust. They don't put it back into your trust unless you ask them to. So I would encourage you, if you did a trust, you think your home's in the trust, and you refinanced, be sure you look at it. Make sure that your home is back in the trust. And if it's not, contact somebody, an attorney or an escrow person to help you get it back in the trust. Don't try to do this yourself. This is the other thing. I'll just make another editorial comment here. Some people feel like they're going to go with the least expensive attorney, but then that attorney doesn't put assets in the trust. So if the assets aren't in the trust, basically the trust is worthless. So you need to make sure that you hire an attorney who can do those things for you. And we just saw that it cost $5,500 just to probate $150,000. A trust will probably cost you between $3,000 and $5,000. It's worth every penny. Utility bills. So why am I talking about utility bills in this conversation? Because, again, experience this. All of our utilities were in Ted's name. I mean, I don't think we really thought about it. After he died, I contacted them and I asked to be added to the utility bill. And I found out that a couple of them charged to do that, and then proceeded to tell me, well, if you had called us before, we wouldn't have charged you. So this is another little tidbit of information. This is cleanup work. The other thing is that, let's say your husband's on the electric bill and he's out of town or out of the country and the power goes out. They may not talk to you again because you're not on the account. So contact your utilities, get both of your names on the accounts. Treasure map. So I am talking about where everything is when I talk about a treasure map. Is anything hidden under your mattress? So like I said, I have a lot of stories and hopefully you find some of them funny. So again, my husband, Ted was a financial planner. And after he passed away, I was changing the sheets, and I kind of reached under the mattress and I actually found a Krugerrand under our mattress. Now, I'm pretty sure he got it right before he was diagnosed with cancer. So I am giving him some grace, but I tell you this because we are all prone to do things like this. I had to laugh. I'm pretty sure he meant to tell me about it. So is anything hidden under your mattress? Is anything in the freezer? Do you have anything that maybe people don't know where it is? Do you and your spouse both know where you keep your business and financial documents? Again, this is very, very important. And are they organized? So both partners know where everything is. And so the remaining partner doesn't have to go on a treasure hunt to find paperwork and other valuables. Again, you both want to be involved with the family finances, okay? A lot of couples, you'll talk to them and they'll say, oh, my husband does all that. I don't like doing that. He's really good at that. Oh, my wife does all that. I've seen it from both sides. That's fine. However, when the person responsible passes away, the person who's left is will often, I've heard that too. My husband died. He did everything. I don't know what to do. So, at least once a year, sit down, go over your finances together. All right, passwords. So it's also important to have each other's passwords because if something happens to one of you, how is the other going to access your accounts? I'm going to go into a little bit of a discussion now about passwords because I think it is so important to have strong passwords and strong security with passwords. I use a program called LastPass, but there are a lot of password managers out there, and I would strongly suggest one of those. And I think if you use a password manager, it's going to make it a lot easier on your surviving spouse to be able to get into your accounts. And this is just some information on what are some best and worst practices. You obviously don't want to pick things that are going to be easy for hackers to guess. Don't store them all on your cell phone, and be sure to protect your desktop, laptop, computer, and cell phone. Okay. Don't use the same password for every account. This is something I think a lot of us do, we'll use it for multiple, but it's not a good idea. It should be long and a bit nonsensical, and it's advisable to think about changing them every 90 days, just so that you keep things cleaned up. Bottom line here is organize, organize, organize. Physical documents, know where they are in your house, both know where they are, and you can also store in an online vault. Keep calm and get organized. And remember, this is a constant decluttering. Just like we declutter our house, we have to declutter our finances. We've got to sit down and go through them every 6 months or so, or sooner than that, and make sure that things are in order. Okay, safe deposit boxes. So it's wonderful to have a safe deposit box, but it's important to make a list of all of the items that you've stored in it. You might want to take photos of the items you've stored in your safe deposit box, and you want to at least have another person who can access it. Because again, if something happens to you and they can't get in the safe deposit box, it will create a bit of a nightmare for them to be able to access documents. This slide talks about what are good things to put in a safe deposit box and bad things to put in a safe deposit box. And by the way, I don't know if this question's come up yet, but I am going to email a copy of all of these slides because there's a lot of information. And this page especially is important You can see here for what some of the good things are. Car titles are really dangerous to have laying around, jewelry, things that, videos or photos of your home in case it burns down, family heirlooms. These are some things you don't want to store in a safe deposit box, mainly because you want to be able to access you might want to be able to access the safe deposit box when the bank is closed, which is what this next slide talks about. You want to have things in the safe deposit box that you can access. Let me rephrase that. You don't want to have items in a safe deposit box that you're going to need when the bank might be closed, right? Like a healthcare power of attorney or a will. Our firm, Gregory Advisors, we have an online vault. So for clients that are on this call, don't forget your online vault. You have unlimited storage. All right. The next thing I'm going to talk about are Social Security survivor benefits. This part of the presentation is going to get into a lot of numbers. I hope I don't make your eyes glaze over. I want to make a couple of really important points as I go along. And my email is on this presentation. So if any of you have questions, you can feel free to contact me later with your questions, or you can post the questions in the chat. All right. So if you're both receiving Social Security and one of you passes away, you'll receive the higher benefit. So in this situation, Jack is getting $31.68 a month. Jill is getting $1,200. Jack dies. Jill gets the survivor benefit of $31.68. So the thing to plan for, though, is that she's going to lose the $1,200. Now, you'll notice I wrote here, unless you're subject to government pension offset. And what that means is if one of you is a teacher, let's say, and you didn't pay into Social Security, you're going to get very little of a survivor benefit. The only way you would is if you've got a lot of Social Security that you've paid into, as well as your teacher pension. So when it gets really tricky is when you haven't collected Social Security benefits. And the reason why I wanted to even talk about this with you all is that Social Security does not always give the best advice. In fact, there was a 2018 study done by the Inspector General that estimated that 9,200 widows and widowers over age 70 were underpaid by about $131 million because they were misinformed. And I have experienced this personally with clients. They go into Social Security, they tell them which benefit they want to take because you can kind of switch. You're going to hear about that in a little bit. And they try to get them to take what they shouldn't take is all I will say. So one thing to remember from this presentation, if anything at all, is if you are in this situation where you haven't collected yet, you do not file for a survivor benefit online with Social Security. You make an appointment and you go into the office. So, but the amount that you're going to get is dependent on when the spouse who died originally started claiming his benefit and when the widow claims her actual survivor benefit. So the survivor benefit is based on, as I said, when the worker claimed his benefit. So in this case, Jack gets $2,400 a month. He dies at 70. If Jack claimed at 70, then Jill's survivor benefit would end up being $3,168. You've probably read in the press, people are saying, wait to take Social Security because your benefit grows. Here's an example. Okay, what if he claimed at 62? Her benefit's going to be less, okay, because he claimed early. Of course, he would have had more Social Security, but his wife's benefit would be less. This chart sort of gives you an idea of how that would work because it's saying this is if Jack claimed at 62, at the various ages that you can claim a survivor benefit, this shows the amount she would get at 62, and this is the amount at 70. So when can you claim survivor benefit? So a survivor benefit can be started at age 60 for a reduced benefit. If your husband dies after you turn 60, you can claim it immediately. Just remember that if you start at 60, it's going to be reduced because you haven't started it at your full retirement age. And Social Security tells you your full retirement age depending on when you were born. You must be married for at least 9 years. A lot of you, not sure if some of you are aware of it, but if you are divorced and your ex has passed away, you could be entitled to a survivor benefit. You need to have been married at least 10 years. You're either unmarried or remarriage took place after 60. So in this situation, Sue is eligible for a survivor benefit because her marriage lasted 10 years. So the tricky part, and the reason I say you don't want to file for survivor benefits online, is how to coordinate a survivor benefit and a retirement benefit. What if you qualify for both? You can switch between the two. You can switch and take a retirement benefit or a survivor benefit. So this is some wording here. You can file what they call a restricted application, where you say, I just want to get my survivor benefit before your full retirement age. For example, you could start your own benefit at 62 and switch to your survivor benefit at 66. Or you can start your survivor benefit at 60 and switch to your retirement benefit at 70. How do you figure out what to do? It depends on the respective amounts. The bottom line is take the higher benefit last. So in other words, if you can, let's say your own retirement benefit is $1,000 a month. Your survivor benefit is going to be $3,000 a month at age 66. If you can take yours, the 1,000, the smaller number at 62, and then switch to the other one at age 66, you'll have more money over your life expectancy. You could also take your survivor benefit first and switch to your own retirement benefit at 70 if your retirement benefit is higher. Again, I know this is kind of complicated, so I'm open. If anybody has any questions, I would be happy to help, and feel free to, I'm seeing a couple questions already, so that's great. All right, let's go through an example. So if the survivor benefit is higher than the retirement benefit, claim the retirement benefit at 62, claim the survivor benefit at full retirement age. In this case, Linda's benefit at full retirement age is $1,000. Her survivor benefit is $2,200. She claims her own benefit, and then she switches to the survivor benefit at 66. If the survivor benefit is lower than the retirement benefit, you do the opposite. You claim the survivor benefit at 60 and the retirement benefit at 70. Dora's full retirement age benefit is $2,000. Her survivor benefit is $1,800. She claims her survivor benefit at 60 and switches to her retirement benefit at 70. Social Security and remarriage. So remarriage before age 60 cancels out survivor benefits and divorced spouse survivor benefits. Remarriage after age 60 does not affect survivor benefits or divorced spouse survivor benefits. I'm added this slide because I'm not really talking about divorced spouse benefits, but I know this is really tricky. So you don't want to confuse a survivor benefit with a divorced spousal benefit. So a divorced spousal benefit is when your ex is still alive, you've not remarried, and you're able to collect half of his benefit as long as you were married for 10 years and your ex is paid into Social Security. If that's the situation, just remember remarriage at any age will disqualify you from receiving a divorced spouse benefit. Okay. So here's a summary of survivor planning: spouse or ex-spouse deceased. Compare your own benefit to the survivor benefit. Take the higher benefit last. Do not remarry before the age of 60. All right, thank you for listening to that. Again, I just feel it's really important for you to understand, especially based on what has happened with Social Security not advising people. So moving on to other fun topics. The national median cost of a funeral is actually $9,000. So it's expensive. It's important to make your funeral celebration of life plans ahead of time so your family doesn't have to do this while they're going through emotional and stressful time. Let them know if you want to be cremated, if you want to be buried, do you want your ashes spread out into the ocean? Whatever it is that you want to do, it's really important you let your family know. As you can see, it's very expensive to pay for these things. And again, families can argue over this. The other thing is I think we've all heard stories after someone has passed away. I think we all feel numb. We miss them so much that we don't really make wise decisions about what to do with funds. So you will be doing them a big, big favor if you make your arrangements ahead of time. So jumping on to the next topic, which is more fun than planning funerals, having friends can extend your life. So people who enjoy strong social ties have a 50% likelihood of survival over people with weak or no social ties. And I think we've been reading about this more in the media, how important it is to have good friends. So think about who your support network is. Who are your business friends? Who are your personal friends? In the book, Susan stresses to form a support network of professionals, legal attorney, financial advisor, accountants, friends, and family you can lean on. Make sure the professionals have current updated docs. Introduce them to one another. Make sure they know each other. I confer with my clients, estate attorneys and their accountants. They're accountants because I like to find out what their tax situation is going to be for the year, so I don't do things that may incur extra taxes. And from their attorneys, so I make sure that any accounts that we have for our clients are titled properly. Also think about it, after you pass away, if they haven't met, it's going to be awkward. I mean, they might sort of be like, who's this person? So it's really important that they all know each other. Also, ask and accept help. Listen to your gut, but surround people who can help lift you up. Friends do extend your life. So here's another study that was done that says that as many as 25% of Americans don't have friends or confidants outside of their family. So if you just depend on your spouse for all of your emotional well-being and then they pass away, it can be totally debilitating. You want to nurture your friends. Having a compassionate friend that you can trust when you've lost a loved one is a life preserver. Take it from me personally. I know that. If you don't have someone like this in your life, seek out a grief counselor or a grief counseling group as well. I did that too, and it literally saved me. Letters and videos to your loved ones. Now, this topic could be a workshop all in itself. What I'm talking about here is writing a letter to your loved ones, your spouse and your children, that they find after you pass away, or creating a video. Now, my husband Ted did this for me, and he actually hired somebody to help him, and he was a good writer. So it's a very hard letter to write. But I can say to you how wonderful it was to find this letter after he passed away. What he talked about were the high points of our relationship, why it was important, the qualities about me that he loved, and some of them were really surprising, but wonderful to read, and what he wanted for me after he was gone. And very honestly, he told me at the very end of the letter that he hoped I would have companionship, and I've been fortunate, and I've remarried a wonderful man. And the fact that I had his blessing in that letter made it really easy for me, or it was just wonderful. It's really important to take care of yourself now, right? All this stuff is really important, but once you get it done, make plans to get out of the house, have fun, take a class or learn something new, spend time with your children, reinvent yourself. A good sense of humor can also be a saving grace, even when life doesn't seem the least bit funny, right? Finally, we all know how important self-care is, how laughter can relieve stress. Rediscover what it means to live for this moment. Do something for yourself you've been putting off for a long time. I created something called the Now bucket list. So a regular bucket list are all the grand things you want to accomplish. It's more about the little things you want to do right now. A Now bucket list. The things you crave, the passions that ignite you, but put off in lieu of finishing your to-do list. So this says write down 5 things you'd rather be doing than sitting in this workshop. Like taking an art class, learning French. I laugh because, again, this is a sort of a dry topic, or not the most happy topic to be discussing. So to wrap it up, in the book that you're going to be receiving, there are some worksheets, but Susan also has checklists available for download on her website. And there's also in the book, Later is Too Late, you'll see what to do when something happens. It's important to go slowly, don't rush. And as a financial advisor, it's always my goal that my clients are free to enjoy their retirement in the present, and that they're not worried about the future. Thank you very much for coming. And here is my contact information for you. Okay, I do see some questions. There's 4 questions here. Do you think it's better to keep all financial and personal information saved in the cloud or on paper? I would say both. Honestly, locked in a cabinet and in the cloud, for sure. Second question, how did grief impact your ability to get all your financial ducks in a row after your husband died? I will say that there are 2 types of people when you go through a grief experience. One person will go into administrative mode and try to get as much done as possible. because when you get into administrative mode, you're pushing the grief aside. Another person will go into procrastination mode. I was probably somebody who went into administration mode, because I think in my mind, again, if I get all this done, then my grief will go away. Well, it didn't. A question: if one spouse took Social Security at 70, does it matter when wife starts Social Security? It all depends on, on what's going on in the situation. You could have a situation where if you're still working, I didn't mention that, but if you collect Social Security before your full retirement age, the first age you can start collecting it is age 62. If you collect it before your full retirement age, you're subject to the earnings test, which means that you will lose some of the Social Security. But good question here. If the person took it at 70 because that person knew their benefit was going to be a lot higher, the husband, then the wife could start it whenever she wanted. It really kind of depends on your whole situation. This one can be tricky. You really want to look at who's got the higher benefit.
For those curious to learn more or to support Finding Something More, please visit findingsomethingmore.org. And until next time, remember, there's always something more to talk about. See you then.